Oh my God, hello. This is Star Host, an astrology podcast where we talk about the hell of living through another apocalypse and the transits coming next week that we are horny for. I am a host, Lana McKenna. I have a Gem Sun, Pisces Moon, and Capricorn Rising.
I'm Matt Dragonstone. I'm another host. I have a Taurus Sun, Sagittarius Moon, and Taurus Rising.
And I'm Larissa Kesby. I'm your final host. I have a Pisces Sun, Leo Moon, and a Libra Rising, and we are so excited, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Oh my God. Hello, welcome. We have a very fun and very interesting episode coming up. So we're going to talk about some really cool planets and some transits that are happening, the start of a new season. We're going to go through some really cool cards that are a little bit different this week than what we've had so far. We're going to finish off with a really cool chat around toxic positivity. So definitely stick around for that. But first, we're going to get straight into Lowdown, which is a segment where we talk about what's going on in our lives right now. We also talk about COVID, and we also talk about politics, which is kind of unavoidable if you're Victorian at the moment because you're stuck at home and there's nothing else to fucking do. So as our lives continue in purgatory, we've been following the media kind of break down Dan Andrews' plan for lockdown, which he released last Sunday. So we've kind of had a couple of days to get into it, and the media's really gotten into it. And there's a couple of real stinkers, which we're going to break down in this segment. We're going to talk about the social bubble for singles, okay, Larissa, you're going to have to break this down for me because I kind of struggled to understand, but then again, I had brain surgery not even 2 months ago.
That's a pretty good excuse.
Yeah, I'll give you a leave pass.
So break down the social bubble for me.
Yeah, so essentially it's the rule that came in or that is coming into effect this Sunday as a part of the new lockdown roadmap. Essentially, at the moment, if you have an intimate partner that you don't live with, you can freely go and see each other at each other's houses, and it doesn't matter how many other people are in the house of the intimate partner that you're going to visit. So if you had a girlfriend that lived with her parents, no problems. You could go and see her whenever you wanted and vice versa. The social bubble is where you are able to pick one friend to be able to go and see if you live alone. And you cannot go and visit that friend if anybody else from their home is in the house as well. So what the fuck? Yeah.
If I am living alone, so I'm a solo person, and I'm like, okay, I want to go see my friend Larissa, and I get on the phone, I'm like, Larissa, I'm coming over, girl. Can't wait to see you. Oh, P.S., can you please just tick out all of your family?
Yeah, get rid of your boyfriend. He needs to leave.
That's such... It doesn't make a bit of sense.
Yeah. So essentially, you the only way this really works is if you have a solo friend to partner with, so someone else that lives on their own that you can then like buddy up with. But I don't know. I only know like one person that lives on their own. So it's so bizarre.
So do you think they did that on purpose?
I think the rules, I don't know why the fuck they've done it, to be honest, because the rules don't make any sense. Like intimate partners are allowed to move freely and interact with entire households, but the social bubble isn't. So I from a medical point of view, I actually don't see the benefit of that.
Yeah.
No, neither do I.
And how do you police it? Do you know what I mean? Even from a government point of view, like writing these rules, do you think any of them were thinking like, oh, how are we going to police this? Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't make a bit of sense.
Yeah. And how do you police it? Like I could leave today and be like, yes, I live on my own and I'm going to see my friend Matt, and yes, he lives in Warburton. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, who do you nominate your friend to? Is there like a friends register?
Oh, I don't
a network for socializing, a social network, if you will.
I do not like the sound of that at all. Imagine if you had to register your one friend on some sort of like...
I don't think you do.
What do you think, Matt?
Oh, I think it's bullshit. I think there's I just think that a lot of this policy was written in a rush in order to, cope with the pandemic. And it's been panic stations since like February pretty much.
Yeah.
But there are a number of examples of just bizarre policies which have these kind of loopholes that haven't been tightened up yet.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you both know the one that I'm referring to, the Queensland policy decision which allowed sex parties but not wedding dances.
I read about that. That was out of control. And
Peak Queensland.
And they fully right. If any state was going to have like a thriving, like swinging scene, it would be Queensland for sure.
Totally. There's nothing else to do up there.
It's never cold, but like, ew.
Very humid.
I mean, you know, if people can do, consenting adults can do whatever the fuck they want as far as I'm concerned. I really don't care.
Totally.
And definitely do not want to know what happens at these sexual parties. But, you know, I mean, the whole story is that only the wedded couple at weddings and their parents are allowed to dance under Queensland's coronavirus restrictions, right? According to ABC News.
Mm-hmm.
But sex clubs and planned sex parties, which may include group sex, are permitted under a COVID-safe industry plan. I don't know how you can, how could you wear a face mask unless that's the point, that's your thing, right? During that kind of a scenario.
Like a GIMP mask, of course.
Like a GIMP mask. It's weird. Yeah. But Queensland Health says the plans balance its health response while, quote, keeping life as normal as possible. I don't know what normal is up there, but fucking hell, I don't want to really be involved. You know?
I just love that they had like a swinging couple in the article talking about, I guess, kind of what goes on at these parties. I thought that was really cool. And they were saying how responsible like everybody is, which I thought was like very reassuring. They were saying, you know, I wouldn't go to one of these parties if I had like a runny nose or whatever, even before COVID. So, I mean,
that's good.
That's really good. Stoked for them.
I mean, these are consenting adults that we're talking about, which is fine. But like, I don't see how like having sex with multiple partners is any less of a contagion risk than like dancing with your grandma to fucking Ed Sheeran. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like it's bizarre. It's another example of the weird, strange policy outcomes that we're seeing, which mean that a lot of governments, state governments in particular, need to really look over and perhaps even redo their kind of, you know, policy decisions that they may have made under the pressure of the moment.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think at the moment we're like, who is making these decisions, you know? Because at the moment, like, that's a big theme of what's happening in Victoria. Like, the police are saying, I didn't decide that. And we've got the chief, health minister saying, well, I didn't decide that either. And then we've got Dan Andrews saying, I don't remember how it was decided.
Yeah. And then
like, it makes me question their thought processes and their decision-making processes, that's for sure.
Cool. All right. So that brings us to our next restriction that we're going to break down, which is the curfew. So for context, for those that don't live in Victoria, essentially the curfew's been in place for a while now. It just means that we can't go out after 8 p.m. In a few weeks, it'll change. So it'll go to 9 p.m., which is a huge deal. So much freedom. Won't know what to do with myself. And basically what's happened this week is our chief health officer, Brett Sutton. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Professor Brett Sutton. Yeah.
So basically he was on radio this week and he admitted that the curfew wasn't based on any health advice. And essentially, like, ever since it's been in place, a lot of people have been kind of questioning what the point of it is. And Dan Andrews denied that he made the decision, and then later, I think the same day, backflipped and said that he had made the decision and that the reason why it was put in place was to help support Vic police. So a lot to break down there. What do you guys think about any of that?
Well, I don't think that the police were aware of that actually until a couple of hours before the curfew was implemented.
Yeah,
definitely.
It hasn't like impacted me personally in a really big way. Like, more than anything, I just liked like a late night ice cream run, like in ISO. Sometimes, like, you know, being real naughty and being like, oh, it's 10 p.m. Like, let's go get some ice cream because it's the only freedom we have right now. That was like really fun and enjoyable. And taking that away, I'm like, God, fucking hell, you're sucking the joy out of everything, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I've got a newborn, right? So like I don't go out past 5:30 in the afternoon, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or otherwise. But I do like having the option if, you know, I get a couple of hours in the evening to like drive to Hungry Jack's, although it's 400,000 kilometers away from where I live. But having that option removed is really what's shitting me. Yeah,
I totally agree. And Larissa, I totally understand what you're saying. Like, the only freedom we have in this goddamn house right now is food. And we are sugar babies. We love a little dessert after dinner. And now it's kind of like we have dinner at 5 or some ludicrous like late afternoon hour.
It's
Purely
the early bird special.
yeah, so we have time to go to the shops afterwards if we feel like a little chocolate treat.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
The amount of times like this lockdown that we have been stung by this curfew purely in the, endeavor for some chocolate has been really the word debilitating comes to mind, but look, it's not really debilitating. But it feels oppressive. I feel oppressed.
But even on like some, it's so weird. Like even on Uber Eats for like desserts or food or whatever, some of them stay open after 8 and some of them close at 8. And I'm like, what's the rhyme or reason there? So sometimes we're like, oh, it's fine. We'll order dessert later, no stress. And then we go on and like everything's closed.
Yeah.
And then what the fuck's going on there? Like some of them are allowed to operate and some of them aren't. I'm so confused still. And I've been living this for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a fucking clue, man.
Well, I think that's kind of the vibe of all of these new rules that have been put in place is it's kind of just really confusing for everybody. It does kind of feel like not just Dan, but the entire kind of team that are working to put these rules in place, they're kind of just shooting from the hip. That's what it feels like because there's just so many double standards and like weird differences in scenarios that kind of haven't been fully thought through, or at least that's what it feels like. So it is kind of hard to know what to do at the moment just because is it illegal? Who knows?
You don't really want to find out. I think the cops are on, short leashes, but they also have shorter tempers at the moment.
Absolutely.
Like I don't want to find out the hard way. I have to drive to a dairy to get my milk every week because we have this really awesome biodynamic milk in the valley. And that's like 7.5 kilometers from my house. So I take like these back roads, these goat tracks through the mountains to get there because I'm afraid that I'm going to get busted for milk. It's crazy.
That is crazy. I was actually reading an article. I sent it to you, Larissa, like last night. It was an article in The Guardian about the modelling that this is all based on, like these rules. And that's been a part of like media speculation this week too. And they were basically breaking down kind of how the modelling was made. And essentially this whole kind of plan that we're in at the moment and that we're moving through where it's based on case numbers, it feels really overcautious, right? And as somebody who is immunocompromised right now, I don't hate that it's overcautious, and I'd really rather only do this once than be back in a lockdown in 3 months' time. So I'd rather do it right now than like rush into anything, even though it's painful. In saying that though, when I read this article, it basically was saying that it didn't take into account, like the modelling, didn't take into account specific settings. So, for example, that there are more cases in aged care. It kind of just lumped all of the cases as if they were all in the community, and that's what they've based the rules on. So I think that's kind of maybe why we're seeing insane rules and maybe like super cautious rules, if that makes sense, where they're still trying to minimize how much movement there is in the community. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think I think that what they're not taking into account is the fact that I think something like 60% of our cases are happening in health settings or in aged care facilities, and the community spread is like much lower than what the numbers are telling people.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
So and the more I think about it, the more I think that like the roadmap out is harsh. It's hard, especially in regional Victoria. I have friends that live in Castlemaine, and everyone up there is really, really fed up. And I think that that's completely fair. They haven't had a case in so long, and they're still on the same restrictions we are. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I think that our attitude towards lockdown and the restrictions and the curfews and everything is kind of the same, right? All three of us agree. We want to get this done right now, as in we want to be able to kind of move more freely around Christmas time. We're willing to go through some pain. But the attitude is also that if any of this pain that we're putting ourselves through is unnecessary, then God help Daniel Andrews. Do you know what I mean? If we have even the slightest inkling that he's pursuing policy guidelines and pathways that aren't based in accurate modelling or good cause, just cause that we can all get on board with, he's really going to face quite a fair bit of backlash. And some of that might even turn violent.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree. I think he knows that too. I think he knows just how kind of fatigued everybody is. I'm sure he's feeling it more than kind of any of us. He's under significantly more scrutiny, and he gets up and does those press conferences every day. If I was Premier, I couldn't do it. Do you know what I mean? I would have done it 6 times, and then I would have been like, you guys know what's up.
Check my Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. Check my Twitter. We are all still in hell. But yeah, I do think he's being like ultra cautious. And I think that's kind of also why he might be not looking to not take responsibility, but it would explain why he was like, oh no, the curfew wasn't me. Do you know what I mean? Just because I think he knew that he was kind of damned if he did and damned if he didn't.
Yeah.
It's another instance of politicizing the fallout. It's politicians acting like politicians.
Yeah.
Like if you even look at ABC recently, there was that article about New South Wales allegedly being the gold standard for COVID control.
Yeah.
According to ScoMo, the fucking tool bag.
Yeah.
Gladys, a fellow Liberal, is doing a bang-up job, and, meanwhile they're stoking fires of hatred against Dandrews and against Anastasia.
Absolutely. Did you read that article though? Because they had I don't know how to pronounce this, but a professor for germs on there, and she was also saying
epidemiologist.
And basically she was saying everyone's contact tracing at the moment, so the very thing that ScoMo was praising New South Wales for was all still being done manually. Nothing has kind of been automated, and the reason that they're doing so well is because case numbers are so low. If community transmission or anything kind of kicked off the way it did in Victoria, New South Wales would be just as fucked as we were.
But I agree with that to a point, but our numbers haven't been 700. I remember the days that it was like there's 10 cases, there's 12 cases, there's 16 cases, there's 18 cases. Like what the fuck was being done then? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I think the Hotel Quarantine Commission, I'm not sure. Some bit of media that I've read in the last week or so was saying how we didn't act fast enough, and that's kind of why. Yeah, and I totally agree. I literally remember watching the cases rise and being like, when is anyone going to step in? Lock us down.
Not only that, but the inquiry found just today. Today's we're recording on Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. Today's Thursday. I don't know what fucking day it is. Don't even worry about that. Anyway, I saw on the news this morning that evidence has come to light that Dandrews actually declined the army to come in and monitor the hotels instead of security guards.
That is wild stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cannot believe that.
Yeah. So the government offered it, and a day later we replied saying, no, we don't need it. Thank you. We've got it under control. And that was at the end of June this year.
I'm finding it increasingly difficult to put myself in Dandrew's shoes, right?
Yeah.
During that time, no one knew what this would look like. We were all shitting our pants. But also the narrative at that time, which may have been the cause for us to make such a delay in responding to the threat, was let's save the economy. Do we save the economy or do we save the people? Meanwhile, across the pond in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern just hard locked down the shit out of that country.
Yeah.
They were back to going to gigs, going to the pubs, going to ski resorts, whatevs, within a couple of weeks or a month or so.
Yeah.
4 weeks, right? It's a month. They've had a little bit of a breakout, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing amazingly bad, catastrophic happening in that country. We took the wrong approach from the start, I feel, which was that we prioritized the economy over the health of our people, and we fucked both of them.
Yeah, I do disagree with that a little bit, because 90% of the cases that have come in this outbreak have proven to come from one family in hotel quarantine. So we just fucked hotel quarantine basically. And
literally,
I think that
let's not forget the security guards.
Yeah, we literally just completely fucked that up, and that's the reason that we're in this situation. And now Dan is scared and he doesn't want to get blamed for anything else. So he's being very cautious when it comes to letting us out. And I think it's overcautious. I think that the economy will suffer even more. So I heard Julia Gillard saying on the radio this morning that calls to Beyond Blue have increased by 70% year on year. People are suffering, man. People are suffering, and it's because of this very overly cautious approach when this thing has a death rate of 0.04%, and most of it is in aged care, which we need to fix anyway. There needs to be a more tailored approach rather than a blanket approach in the community, and that is my flat out opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think like when it comes to aged care, something needs to be done. And it's really frustrating that our Minister for Aged Care is a fuckwit and is essentially just a flesh bag who doesn't even know his own job. So that was really frustrating to kind of watch that happen a few weeks ago, where he couldn't even talk to the numbers in his own like remit. So that was really, really frustrating. But I mean, federal government's been quite disappointing with regards to like what they're in charge of as well. And I also think it kind of doesn't matter what Dan does, like from now moving forward. Like,
Oh, he's over. He's over.
yeah, like the Murdoch media are not going to give him a break. Like, there's just no way that the federal government aren't also going to make an example of him as well. And that's really, like, it sucks. But like, as Matt was saying, the more that this kind of goes on and the more we're learning, the harder it is to kind of empathize and be like, oh, well, you know, he's trying his best, when it kind of feels like he's avoiding responsibility for some of the decisions he made.
We can't expect Andrews not to act like a politician. He is a politician. He's a good one. He made it all the way to Premier. God knows where he'll go after this. It all depends on how he acts, and he's aware of that, and that's why he's acting the way he is. Meanwhile, we're all sitting at home twiddling our thumbs and waiting for him to kind of make decisions that may be solely based on public health interests, mental health included in that, versus his own career aspirations.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else that you guys...
Yes, there is something I would like to talk about.
Please hit us, Larissa. What is it?
I would like to talk about the end of an era, something that's going to greatly impact us all, and it is the Kardashians ending their TV show.
Yeah, wild. Okay, this was legitimately the wildest news that...
I'm going to go and get ready for astrology.
Honestly, though, like, Matt, you can't deny the impact that this family have had on the world, or I should say the Western world.
Yeah.
They've certainly impacted, like a wisdom tooth or a bowel.
Oh, my God. I think, like, because we're in lockdown, we don't really have much else to do. Like, I've always been someone that stays really, really close to celebrity gossip. And I think that, like, because of COVID, celebrity is definitely changing. Like, the three of us talk about it offline all the time, how the concept of celebrity is undergoing huge changes because everything is so open, everything is so public. Like, it's very easy to be a celebrity now. So I think that concept is changing. So for them to like respond to that by being like, no, we're going to get ahead of this and stop our television show before it dies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean,
smart.
We've spoken about this before, but I really think that COVID has changed people's expectations of what celebrity is and what it isn't. And watching celebrities kind of move through the pandemic, and I don't know, like, it's just no longer relatable watching celebrities live through a pandemic, and not trying to minimize their experiences, but it's just unrealistic anymore. And in a COVID kind of era, I want authenticity. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I don't, like, and I'm not doubting their experiences at all. I know it's absolutely real to them. But when I think about Kardashians, like, what I used to love about them is now kind of the things that I no longer relate to them on.
Same.
Yeah. I loved Kylie. She was my fave. And Khloe.
I do. Like, I love watching the old episodes before they were like rich and famous.
Yeah.
That's the authenticity.
Definitely.
It's so good. And I think that this stuff's happening in our own backyard as well. Like, I was reading the other day on the Daily Mail, don't fucking judge me. I was reading on the Daily Mail that Beck Judd, who is a wag that lives here in Victoria, she has a $7 million home in Brighton. She posted, she was doing like a spawn on her Instagram and posted about how good it would be to be outside, but she can't be because of Dictator Dan. And people fucking popped off.
Yeah, I bet they did.
Saying like, you know, it's the new Karen from Brighton. Like, how dare she talk shit when she gets to isolate in a $7 million house? And it made me think, like, how rich do you have to be before your opinions on being isolated become invalid?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, because in Australia we love tall poppy syndrome. Like, if you've done too well, we're going to fucking tear you down. We're not going to lift you up, which is wild. But like, how rich do you have to be before we're like, we don't care about your opinion anymore?
Yeah, I think it's pretty instantaneous in Australia. Like, as soon as you talk about an issue regardless of kind of what it is, there'll always be a group of people that's like, shut the fuck up, stay in your lane. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I don't know.
And it's so interesting because there was another group of people that were like, she's been isolating too, regardless of the size of her house. She has 4 children, and I'm sure this has been really tough on her as well. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk about this on a much more smaller scale a little bit later when we talk about toxic positivity. We have a bit of a discussion around that, which is really cool. But it's wild kind of seeing it on this macro level where, celebrities aren't allowed to complain, like, ever.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a quick break and then get into astrology.
Welcome to Astrology. I'm your host, Matt Dragonstone, and I'm a fucking idiot. Let me tell you why. I sent through the wrong transits to Lana and Larissa last week, and so we actually ended up recording transits for 2 weeks ahead. So we've had to re-record this very late, very special, very I'm sorry edition of Astrology to get everything right. Let's kick it off.
Hey, I'm happy that we're together on a Monday morning. Like, it's fun. It's a good way to start the week.
Yeah, it is really nice. I love talking astrology any time of the week. So yeah, no problems here, mate.
You're too kind. So let's talk transits for this week, the 14th of September to the 20th of September. I'm saying this for my benefit. Sun in Virgo is going to trine Pluto in Capricorn tomorrow, Tuesday, the 15th of September. And then on Wednesday, the 16th of September, Venus in Leo is going to form a square with Uranus in Taurus. And then finally on Friday, the big one is Sun in Virgo is going to form a trine with Saturn in Capricorn. If none of that makes sense, that's totally okay. The point of this segment is to break it down, make it simple, and give you some real valuable practical tips to make the most of these amazing transits that we've got this week.
Before we get into anything, can we just all say Uranus in Taurus 5 times together really quickly?
Uranus in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus.
Uranus in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus.
It's difficult to read on the screen. You know what? Why don't we just say Uranus? Because I know a lot of people who love making anus jokes at me, my girlfriend particularly. Hi, Joey. Because, I'm an astrologer, and why not make jokes about butts?
Yeah, well, I'm so surprised that we haven't mentioned butts, and we've talked about Uranus a lot already on this podcast, and butts haven't come up at all. And I'm not going to lie to you, it feels like a missed opportunity, guys.
And also, I think that Matt deliberately says Uranus, so not only so that he lords over us and sounds better than us, but also then it's like Uranus sounds buddy and Uranus doesn't sound buddy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
he's deliberately like driving us away from the butt jokes, but eventually we'll find a way.
Yeah.
I got over anuses a long time ago as an astrologer, but let's the only way to the top is through the bottom, guys. Let's do that. Okay, so the Sun in Virgo is our first big transit. So Sun in Virgo trine Pluto in Capricorn. That's happening tomorrow, Tuesday the 15th. So the Sun, the representative of our souls, our motivation, our core identity, is in Virgo at the moment. It's Virgo season, but it's going to make a trine, which is a really positive, harmonious aspect to Pluto. Now, Pluto is the representative of our deep currents of subconscious energy, and it's been in Capricorn for a couple of years. It's going to stay in Capricorn until 2025. So, once or twice a year we get the chance for, the Sun trine Pluto. It's usually when the Sun is in Taurus or in Virgo, and this time around it's in Virgo. It's fun times, guys.
Yeah, so explain this one to me, because when I see anything Pluto, I immediately get my back up, even though there's a trine involved. Like when I read this transit, I was like, oh shit, what the hell is going to happen? I immediately flipped out, because Pluto kind of represents big, deep transformation, right?
Yeah, it does. Pluto's a bit uncompromising, okay? It's the modern ruler of Scorpio. So the traditional ruler of Scorpio is Mars. But Pluto is big Scorpio energy. So it's very no bullshit. It's very cut to the chase. But, it tends to burn away the dross if it's kind of making a conjunction or a square. But with a trine, it's actually a really great opportunity to harmoniously combine Sun energy with Pluto energy. Just recalling the analogy of a trine. Just think of two mates who maybe haven't seen each other for ages. They're in a bar, they're catching up, they get each other's jokes. There's this natural rapport between planets that are in trine with one another. And the Sun and Pluto is all about being empowered. It's awesome, awesome times.
Okay, so that sounds like very positive, because I just have a mental block when it comes to Pluto, because I just know that they represent like Scorpio energy. But that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of with Scorpios or with Plutos generally. But the thing with this transit to keep in mind is, because it's a trine, that ordinarily quite sort of, confronting and sometimes terrifying Pluto energy is getting along really well with the Sun. And the Sun is the king or the queen of your soul and drives your soul through this incarnation. So this transit is all about harnessing those Plutonian subconscious reservoirs of energy and power and directing them towards what you want, right? Pluto energy can't easily be contained. It's, that modern ruler of Scorpio, so it's not necessarily about the ego. The Sun and Mars tends to, represent the ego on a kind of surface level. But for a very short period of time, for tomorrow, the ego and the deep reservoirs of subconscious energy get along well together. So when the two get together, it's a bit like a cosmic power-up. It's a small window that we can use to turbocharge our desires. It's really, really good.
So what kind of stuff should we be doing tomorrow to harness this like really powerful energy?
Well, it's about asking yourself, what do you want, right? So you start with the Sun, you start with the core of who you are. And, not what's best for you, not what you have to do, but what you personally want, right? Out of, your day, or if you're working on something a bit longer term, what do you want to get done? And when this transit occurs, you can move closer to your goal with greater ease, thanks to that harmonious energy blending, big Pluto energy with big Sun energy. So what do you want, Janye? What do you want, Lana?
Well, what I'm hearing is that so tomorrow is really good if you want to do some manifesting, if you want to make a vision board, if you want to start a project, if you want to light the fire behind something that you've been working on for a little while and get reinvigorated. I'm hearing that tomorrow is a really good day to kick that off.
Perfect. What a great description of it. Yeah, 100% agree.
Awesome.
Love that.
What about you, Lana? What do you want?
Well, to me, it just kind of feels like it's a really good opportunity to set boundaries, whether that's with yourself or with others as well. I just think when I think about what is deeply empowering, it is having that self-respect and that self-love to maybe draw lines where, there aren't at the moment. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And boundaries and lines, the Sun is in Virgo, that's an earth sign. And, Pluto's in Capricorn, that's an earth sign. So earth signs tend to really rely on and respect the delineations between things, the boundaries, those intermediate points that separate, the me from the you, the I from the they. And I think it's a great way of describing it, because if you wanted to set boundaries with another person, if you wanted to set boundaries within yourself even, because this is Pluto and it's subconscious, then that's a great way of manifesting and harnessing that energy for tomorrow, for sure.
Definitely. Cool. Love that.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we've got another one up our sleeves. It's Venus in Leo squaring Uranus in Taurus, and that happens on Wednesday, the 16th of September. So Venus, the love goddess, the pleasure seeker, the party animal, is in Leo, and it's making a square, which is a really difficult but ultimately very powerful aspect to Uranus. It's squaring right up Uranus. And it's, Uranus is the rebel, it's the weirdo, it's the genius. It's a couple of things that kind of stand sometimes in stark contrast to Venus, and particularly Venus in Leo.
So, Matt, before you go on, we haven't talked about squares before. So could you just explain to us what a square is?
Yeah, definitely. So trines are fab, squares are drab. That's the mnemonic to remember.
Is that what they
now, I know you're all
astrology school?
Yes, when I went to Hogwarts School of Astrology, yeah, that's basically like year 6 all wrapped up in a nutshell. But whereas trines are good mates catching up in a bar, squares are like the cold calling telemarketers of the zodiac. Do you like that one? That's one of my own creation. Snake wouldn't teach me that. But it's hard to predict exactly when a square will manifest. You'll feel that background energy, but it's hard to tell when it's going to happen. It's hard to understand exactly what the fuck a square wants from you. And it's hard to hear exactly what squares have to say. And it's hard to restrain yourself from making death threats against squares because they're fucking stressful, right? Like telemarketers, basically.
Yeah.
So, out of that stress and out of that tension can come real progress, like real, not necessarily slow and steady and harmonious and feel good like a trine, but definitely fast tracked. And, it forces something new out of the conflict of things that seem to be totally, totally different. So squares are stress, man. Venus is love and pleasure, and Uranus is rebellion and progression. Leo is the king or queen of the zodiac, and Taurus is the stubborn old bull, right? So that's kind of the energy that we're experiencing on Wednesday. Stress and tension between those two are seemingly disparate categories of human experience.
I am not excited by this. And okay, so I'm going to fight with my boyfriend.
I'm not even joking. Larissa, you should see. Okay, so I researched this one, and literally the very first article I found was completely insane. So insane. I have copied it word for word because in the beginning, it sounded like, oh my God, this is speaking directly to us, because it was talking about how we were all experiencing a sense of overbearing lack of freedom, as if locked up in a cage made of our own wariness and apathy. Wild, very true. But then it goes on to say, if you and your partner both share the same opinions and interests in bed, you can be rest assured that you'll get along just fine during this transit. However, right, things can get a tad bit spicier if you, what does it say? Than you would have expected in bed, which you'll enjoy. However, if your partner is the traditionalist type, you might be in for a bit more than a few arguments that might eventually lead into cheating or a breakup. So,
what?
I know. How insane is that?
Well, not everyone's into Uranus. That's just
Fact.
Oh my God. I have never come across anything so like, okay, so no big deal. Things will either be very nice in bed or you'll break up.
That's a broad spectrum.
It is, right?
Let's drain a bit of that kind of toxic venom away from that article. I mean, it's true in a sense. Not everyone's going to experience that. In fact, maybe a fraction of 1% of people will have that manifest tomorrow. So let's just, downplay or decompress a bit of that paranoia. Will it affect relationships? Yes, it will, probably. But it's more about the expression of these two energies. Venus and Uranus square off twice a year. They've been squaring off twice a year since the dawn of the universe, okay? So not everyone breaks up twice a year, right? We all make it through one way or the other, or most of us do. But there will be an effect on your relationships. The two signs that these planetary energies are expressing themselves in are fixed, Leo and Taurus, stubborn in their own ways. So you may want one thing or your partner may want another thing. And tomorrow's just going to be a little example of how the differences between your desires can cause stress and tension. Not just in your intimate relationships, though. We'll probably see this in all our relationships, co-workers, friends, family. and so on. Venus is the social lubricant that makes relationships easy. And Uranus is more concerned with breaking rules. And, what needs more lubricant than Uranus is what I have to say.
What a great joke.
So basically, if Venus is the lubricant and Uranus wants to break rules, so there could be some chaos happening.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, what happens when the king or the queen encounters a rebel, right? We get war. Okay. Really great Game of Thrones reference. I don't know if you remember the Cersei versus that sparrow cunt, whatever his name was, the monk.
Varies.
No, was it Varys? No, I'm talking about the old guy who had like just monk's robes.
Oh, Littlefinger.
No, there was not even Littlefinger. No, it was this guy who led a rebellion against Cersei based on religious extremism. I can't remember. Actually,
oh yeah, I know the guy. He wore bare feet. She blew him up.
Yeah, she blew him up.
Hang on,
everyone.
Guys, hang on. High Sparrow. That's his name.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the High Sparrow. That's a great example of Venus and Leo and Uranus in Taurus. Uranus is the extremist. Uranus is the kind of fanatic. And Leo is the monarch, right? So she blew him the fuck up. Be careful you don't blow up your partner tomorrow, right? Or your relationship. Just rest assured it's transitory. It's going to pass within a day. Just take a deep breath and relax and just remember my voice saying everything will be okay. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you feel yourself getting heated tomorrow, just obviously remember Matt's kind words, I guess. That's the only advice we could really give you.
Yeah.
Well, the transit's good for stuff. Right? It's good for stuff. When we feel the stress, we are actually tapped into enormous power, okay? We just don't realize it. We're just experiencing it as stress. But we want two different things with squares. So we want self-care, fun, and pleasure with Venus and Leo, but we also want to revolutionize our values with Uranus and Taurus. You can't just blend the energies. You have to live with two different equally valid energies competing with one another for dominance. And somewhere in that massive pressure cooker, something radically new can emerge. So the question you should take into tomorrow might be, where do you want your relationships to go? If it's radically new, then bring it up. Be prepared to fight for it. It's not going to be an easy energy. But if you stick to your guns and you're prepared to risk it all, the reward is nothing less than real fucking progress, yo.
Do you think there's an opportunity here too, even if you're having a conversation with not necessarily just your partner, but anybody else, if you are finding that you are in conflict tomorrow, just having a moment or taking a moment to listen to what the other person is saying and maybe, I don't know, wondering if there's any sort of middle ground or how can you negotiate to an outcome that maybe, you hadn't considered before. Do you think that would be helpful too, Matt?
Oh, 100%, guys. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, Venus and Uranus have been squaring off against each other twice a year forever. Mm-hmm. So, we take a lot of our own experiences into the transits that we encounter. And we also take a fair amount of free will with us as well. So it doesn't pay to, sort of suspend all of your ability to diplomatically engage with other people, all of your interpersonal skills with an aspect like this. In fact, it pays to kind of let that overlay the energies that are competing against each other just momentarily. Mm-hmm. So all of your skills, all of the things that you've learned, all of your manners and things like that, just try and remember them, because ultimately Venus squaring Uranus isn't something to get all shitty about.
Yeah, totally. Cool.
All right. So we've got the Sun in Virgo trining Saturn in Capricorn on Friday, the 18th of September, okay? So our old friend Saturn in Capricorn is back with a vengeance with this particular aspect, but it's a trine, it's not a square. We get the nicer side of Saturn. We get to experience a little bit of the good side of Saturn, and there is manifold and plenty of good things about Saturn, particularly.
Oh, unfortunately, I cannot agree with you, Matt. I have never encountered a positive aspect of Saturn in my life.
It's cool, man. Like Saturn's not the most popular, but Saturn can be quite useful and practical. Okay. So the sun, which we remember is the representative of our souls, our motivation, our core identity, that's in Virgo, and it's making a trine, which is that wonderful harmonious aspect to Saturn. Now, Saturn is the representative of boundaries, limitations, restrictions, consolidation, and knowing your shit. And it's in Capricorn, so you can just copy paste that description for Capricorn. It doesn't sound fun, right? I'm keen to hear what you feel about that.
Larissa? I just need a moment to think about it.
Yeah.
So,
it sounds like we're going to have to work.
yeah.
Yeah. So Saturn's a crusty old butt fucker of a planet, right? That's just the way that Saturn works. But sometimes we need Saturn to be in our lives, right? So think about it. Boundaries, limitations, restrictions, consolidation. We can't, and I'm sure anyone who's over 30, has kind of experienced this with the Saturn return. We can't just run around thinking that we can do everything, or that we could do anything, that the sky's the limit, etc. You have to accept your limitations at some point, and that's depressing, but ultimately it allows you to work really effectively within the limits of what you're capable of. Being aware of that just saves you a lot of time, just saves you a lot of energy. And while it's not the most glamorous thing, it's not like Neptune or Venus, it's certainly something that is useful for you in the long term, right?
I think that's quite liberating if you look at it in the right way.
Yeah, definitely.
It really is.
I did also read that this is a really great transit for getting recognition for hard work.
Definitely.
Like that was kind of the biggest vibe that I kind of got out of the research that I did was that, during this transit, you'll be recognized for just all the hard work you've done and the things that you've put effort into. But it also said that if you aren't working, then patience and attention to detail make a good time for routine chores. So I don't know, think of that what you will.
Listen up, I have a Leo moon in the 4th and I need to be recognized for all my hard work all the fucking time, just so you guys know.
Yeah, I thought you would really like that.
Well, look, Saturn's not the only player in this Tango de la Muerte. It's the Sun in Virgo is also there as well, right? So the Sun in Virgo knows how to fix things, and it's getting along famously with that salty old cunt when the transit happens, right? So the same as with Pluto. When we get kind of two goes at harmonizing these two energies a year, at least for the past year or so. And one is when the sun's in Taurus. The other one's when it's in Virgo. And we've got the Virgo end of the year at the moment. So we can put in firm and lasting solutions to problems. We can get recognition. We can also work really effectively with our core identity during this transit, right? So think of the existential equivalent of a leaky tap, right? So mine is durries. It's this leaky tap, drip, drip, drip. I love the durries. It's how I get this voice. It's not from like anything else, right? Other people's may be like adherence to yoga schedules that they're really obsessive about, or smack, or an inability to cook brown rice, or whatever. I'm not good at examples today. I'm sleep deprived. But it takes discipline and hard work to fix a leaky tap, okay? This transit is great for rolling up your sleeves and getting to work on those things that we may have put off because we just can't be fucked, right? Who wants to do Saturn shit? No one. That's why we have a Saturn return and everything sucks at 30. But with this transit, we can kind of tap into a bit of motivation and blend that really well with the ability to be disciplined and limited and restricted and get shit done in a focused way, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I don't want to work, but, I'll take the energy and I'll run with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most Capricorn Saturn thing I've heard all week. It's only Monday, so who knows? But, do me a favor, actually, post your experiences of this week's transits on Instagram and let us know how you're experiencing them, because I'm super keen from a professional perspective as an astrologer to see how people make, this Saturn Sun trine work on Friday, and the other ones as well. Really keen to hear about Leo, Venus versus Uranus and Taurus, and, of course, the Sun in Virgo trining Pluto in Capricorn.
So in summation, let's just like talk the week out. So like Tuesday is manifesting day. Wednesday is either have a lot of sex or avoid arguing with your partner. Co-workers, don't have sex with your co-workers. Actually do it if you want, that's fine.
No, never do it. It's not a good idea.
and then on Friday, it's about rolling your sleeves up and doing the things that you might have been putting off.
Yeah, exactly
That's
right.
the week.
Yep. Yeah, that's the week, my friends. And sis, that's the tea. I'm Matt Dragonstone. Goodbye.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Hi there, my name is Larissa and this is These Unprecedented Times. This is the segment where we each pull a card and talk about the energy that might be around this week as a result of that, because we are all fantastic psychics that can see into the future. We have officially entered the Twilight Zone. It's Monday morning. Just letting you know that we had a bit of a mix-up with our recording last week because no one's perfect / everything is perfect. I'll leave that with you. So you might hear us talk about transits that are actually coming up the week after next in this segment, but that's okay. It's still going to be relevant for you guys next week. So without further ado, let's get into it. Matt, what is your card?
Thanks so much, Larissa. So I've just flipped over the card that I pulled a little bit before we started recording, and oh my God, it's the Four of Cups.
Whoa.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
All right, so I'm going to try and do a bit more of a good, better, more better visual description this week. Every time I try and describe a tarot card, I end up tongue-tied and my mind goes blank, so my apologies. I'm using the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's the only one I use. The Four of Cups in this particular deck is the following images. So it's a young man sat under a tree, and there are 3 cups in front of this young man, and there's one cup that is being held by a hand that is emerging from a cloud beside the man's head. The young fella is, sitting there cross-legged, crossed-armed, looking, downcast and a little bit kind of ungrateful, dejected, unhappy, and petulant. And that's kind of the theme. I mean, I don't mean to offend literally everyone who listens to us, but I think in lockdown at the moment, the vibe I'm getting from this card is that we have small offerings from the government that pretty much all of us are just going to have jack of, basically. And, while we've already kind of spoken about this at the start, a number of us are questioning things like the curfew. Why is the curfew being increased by an hour? Why is this happening? What's the necessity of this? We're not really happy. We're not really satisfied with the offerings potentially that Dandrews has given to us. And I think it's reflected in the card, right? And I think that we're kind of moving into a space over the next week or so where we're going to start really, really questioning the necessity of our lockdown and the laws that kind of, govern it, so to speak.
I think that's really timely, especially for Victorians.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're kind of just going to start getting jack of it. It's interesting because there's astrological transits that underlie this. Again, it's Mars square Saturn. Our desire to kind of push out, be free, do our own thing, not be told what to do versus, everyone's attempt to do exactly the opposite of that, which is keep us locked down, etc., particularly the government.
Very
so good.
Heavy vibes, not necessarily a good card. I think we're all going to feel a bit sort of frustrated.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, that's around. That's unavoidable.
Yeah, I think we haven't felt that already,
So I have I've just pulled a card as well. And I've actually I'm using the same deck that Matt is using, so the Rider-Waite tarot deck as well. And I've actually just pulled the Ace of Swords, which is a very interesting card. So essentially it is a hand in a cloud, and it's holding a sword that has a crown and a wreath hanging over it as well above some mountains. So any ace cards are obviously the highest in the suit, and swords are obviously cutting. So this card usually translates to some kind of success. It's about your ability to kind of cut through stuff and overcome obstacles and finding kind of achievement within that. So I actually think that this card is really about Scorpio and Mercury, if I'm really honest. I think that it's we're going to be looking for the bullshit, cutting through the stuff, and hopefully we can get some success out of that.
Here's hoping, eh?
No more lies.
That sounds like a really interesting card, actually, because whenever I see it, I always think of willpower.
Yeah.
And, just using our minds to kind of, overcome our emotions, for instance. My cards seem to be a bit more emotionally discontent, unhappy. And it seems like what you're saying is that we're going to like push ahead with our minds to try and like kind of overcome the frustration and just make it for the last couple of weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it definitely, as I said, it definitely talks to that Mercury moving into Scorpio, where we're just going to be cutting through stuff as well. Like I don't know why I just keep getting the government. It's like we're going to be cutting through. Like, okay, we're sick of your lies. We're sick of this bullshit. Like we need to know the truth. We need to know what's actually happening. We need more facts. We need more figures. And hopefully we can start to get some transparency that way as well.
Yeah, agreed. Interesting times.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Very different from the last couple of card pulls that we've had as well, where it was much more like we're in this together, harmonious, we can do it, optimistic, and now it's kind of feels like it's going into a more like realistic or analytical kind of vibe.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong, my card is definitely about success and about overcoming stuff, but you will obviously have to go through some things to overcome.
Yeah, cool. Love that.
Nice, man.
Should I go?
How about you, Lana?
Yeah. So I'm using the Hero's Journey Dream Oracle card deck, and I just pulled number 16, and it says you're in great company. Pull back to propel forward. So kind of in line with what you were just saying, Larissa. So it's somebody sitting down, their arms are around their knees, and they've got their head kind of in their lap, and their arms are protecting their head. So it looks like they're taking a nap or crying. And they're surrounded by all these like different colors, like purples, yellows, reds, pinks. And they're wearing kind of like flowy robes. So if you picture somebody in that pose, but maybe sitting in a wave of color, that is what this card looks like. So yeah, very pretty. Big like washing machine shower, like ad vibes. Do you know what I mean? How there's like always like water flowing and stuff like that in colors. So that's what it reminds me of. But I'll read you the message that it's got because I think this is really interesting. So it says, those that have made the biggest impact on the planet, in addition to feeling extremely passionate, also felt resistance too. Martin Luther King, Abe Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, Joan of Arc are but a few. Every hero and in history has had moments of self-doubt, even paralyzing fear, before doing the courageous act of becoming their legacy. They felt the fear but did it anyway, that they were the thing that they were called to do. For this reason, you need not be deterred when you bump against uncertainty. In fact, doubt helps you chisel the ego out of the way, which is key to accomplishing a mission of merit and becoming a channel for grace and higher purpose so that we can move forward. Know that you are in great company, and when you are ready, you'll get up and go like the great ones who came before you, and upon whose shoulders you now stand. So that's pretty wild.
Fuck, that sounds amazing, man.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. So what that kind of says to me is that we're not alone, and that even when we are faced with difficult decisions or when we are looking to do something that scares the shit out of us, it's probably something that we should do. And if it takes us a minute to collect our courage and move forward, that's totally fine. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It means that you probably absolutely should. And in these times, I think it's a really great message of togetherness and that we are all in this together. And as we kind of move through these transits, I think we will feel much more united. But on a personal level, if we are going through some stuff as a result of, I don't know, a year of fucking trauma, it's okay for us to take a minute before we step forward. So, yeah.
That's
beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, really powerful.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Really, like, I think these are really they're all really interesting cards, and they definitely point to everything that we've been talking about during the episode, as they always do. We're very good at this, which is so good.
I agree.
What I want to talk about before we wrap up, though, something that's just come to me while everybody's been talking, and that could be considered a controversial topic, but I just want to ask you guys what you think about it. So right now, obviously, not just Victorians, but I think everyone might be feeling a little bit low energy, a little bit fatigued on, all the stuff that's coming down from the media, fatigued if you're in a lockdown, fatigued if you can't see your family because of the borders being closed, all that kind of stuff. But then on the other hand, there's this like wave of like what I like to call toxic positivity. It's just out there just being like, you're fine. Make sure you remember when at the start of ISO where it was like, bake bread, lose weight, like take this time to be better. If you're not a different person at the end of ISO, you haven't done it right, like all of this stuff. And I think at the beginning that was very intense, but I still see it like popping up on like LinkedIn and Facebook and Insta as well. So I just wanted to see like how you guys cope when you're having a day where you're like super low energy, super fatigued, and you might see some like toxic positivity going around, or talk to someone that's like, you'll be fine, like don't even worry about it. How do you cope with that?
Well,
I know.
I think in my experience, so in like the last 12 months or so, I've actually come up against this quite a lot. So I guess, how do I explain this? So I have a really strong grandmother. She's incredible. I really love her a lot, but she is a very practical gal, and she's also been through a lot of the stuff I have. So we've both got lung cancer. We're both, on this very similar treatment regimes. I've mentioned in the past, she came down when I first got diagnosed and really helped me through a lot of the emotional stuff, which was really incredible. But she's from a very different time where it was very much like that, where you didn't really wallow, you just kind of got on with it. So I do find that sometimes when I talk to her about, say, my mental health, if that's not doing too great, she does kind of say things like that. So like, you'll be fine. You should be grateful. You've got so many good things going on. And it does, I understand where she's coming from, definitely. I know she's just trying to help, but it does sometimes just minimize what I'm going through, if that makes sense. Or it doesn't, what's the words? Like invalidates my experience or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like it kind of like, well, yeah, I guess I should be grateful, that I'm alive. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I can't fucking complain when things are shit. You know what I mean?
I feel like that happens for so many people. Like I know that like we have friends that are like, I'm having a really tough day today, but I still have a job and I have a roof over my head and food on the table. So I should just be happy, right? And I'm like, you don't have to be all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
exactly.
It's okay to give yourself a day or a week or like whatever you need to get through what you need to get through, as long as you're not denying how you feel and you're, like for me, a gem, obviously the most important. If you're communicating it with somebody, if there's somebody that you can talk to, I think that makes a huge world of difference, So yeah, for me, it's talking about it, because that's how I kind of make sense of things, by talking. But yeah, also journaling and stuff too. Finding the right people to talk to is important.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more about recognizing what attachments you form to people and their energy. So, I tend to try and stay off social media. Incidentally, follow us on Instagram. But, for me, it's more about kind of recognizing that what you take in through your senses and what you take in energetically from the people that you come into contact with can affect your own energy, and it can affect how the rest of your day goes, for instance, particularly in these really hyper intense times where we may only see a handful of people during the day. If somebody is telling me that I should be grateful because I'm alive, that's good. But if I feel like that's not really validating how I'm feeling, or if that's not necessarily, it's minimizing how I'm feeling, basically, then I'll just remind myself of just how easy it is to walk away. Whether that's physically walking away or whether that's just kind of being conscious that you're just shutting off the energy that you're taking in from that person and their attitude.
What about if that's coming like if that's an internal thought? So I know that I know people, and I sometimes do this myself. Like, I don't feel like I sometimes give myself the space to feel things because I'm like, I shouldn't feel like this. I have everything I need.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean, Larissa. I do that to myself, like basically every emotion that comes up, I'm just like, no. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the inner saboteur. Like, goddamn, it gets me hard sometimes.
Yeah, truly.
We really love self-care on this podcast, right? Like, we're all about the self-care. I think self-care includes things like, allowing yourself to feel like shit sometimes. And, maybe it's because your Amazon delivery is late as opposed to, there being a famine or something like that, right? There's 1,000 examples of real intense human suffering you can compare your suffering to and feel shit about feeling shit. Or you can just go, you know what, I'm fucked off because like Australia Post is taking a month to send something to me from the next suburb and it's all too much. And, you give yourself permission to wallow.
Yeah.
For a bit, put a time limit on it. And then when you're done, when that time limit's up, you should feel more willing to step out of that and, get on with things. That's my experience, at least. I'm keen to know what you think about that, actually.
I think my inner saboteur and my inner like thought processes, like as I've said to you guys before, I'm like so good at feeling emotional and letting my feelings wash over me so that I can just move through them really quickly. But some days I'm like, I compare myself to other people, and I know that is the key to unhappiness. Like I am so acutely aware that the second I compare myself to somebody else, like it's fucking over for me that day. But I have a real tendency to do it and just be like, well, I don't have it as bad as that person, so I should just shut the fuck up because I'm entitled and I'm a brat. And that is my own internal thought processes. And some days I can't defeat that, to be really honest.
Yeah. Something I've found that has been a slow burn but has like yielded good results is to like literally just be kinder to yourself mentally. So the way you speak to yourself in your head is a real reflection of how you view yourself. So I know for me, I've always kind of considered myself to be somebody who is really proactive in understanding myself, in, growing, all that sort of stuff, and in personal development. But I would still internally tell myself to shut up or like minimize my feelings or, compare myself to others or whatever, right? And I realized that, I can say that I love myself as much as anyone, but if I'm still talking to myself like that, even on bad days, then that's a bit of a red flag. So I do think how you talk to yourself internally, like if you just start talking to yourself like a friend, and you give yourself a break, you're probably more likely to be kinder to yourself when you are upset.
Such good advice.
That's fucking awesome advice, man.
Yeah.
I think also like if you're being kinder to yourself, if you're talking to yourself like a friend, and if you're still having issues with that self-talk being negative and sabotaging yourself and shutting down conversations, don't be afraid to reach out to someone who, may have a specialty in helping you with, mental health issues. Therapists, there are phone numbers, there are services that are able to be provided, sometimes at little or no cost, for mental health issues, because this is a difficult time, right? We've seen a massive spike in depression and suicide attempts and things of that nature during the lockdown. It's hard. And,
hard.
Maybe the first step can be critical care,
Absolutely. I do think, if, like you were saying, Larissa, if you're in a position where you feel that, people might be having a harder time than you might also be less likely to reach out when you need it too. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know for me, like if something is going downhill with my health or whatever, I make sure I immediately have my network set up so that, I've got, a psychologist to talk to, got a kinesiologist to talk to in Allison. I've got all you guys as well. But when those things aren't happening, I'm kind of like the last person to look after myself when things aren't dire. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm like, oh, well, there was so much worse, or, it could be so much worse, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of that kind of thinking stops me from reaching out when really we should be doing it all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very, very interesting. So in short, I just think that toxic positivity is the worst
Oh, I
for our society.
It really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Totally agree.
Serves no practical purpose, friends.
It sure doesn't. Yeah. It's a real waste of fucking time.
All right. Well, that was like a really, I think that was a really good conversation to finish on. Thank you. Thanks, guys, for sharing your personal insights. They're always so good. So I might wrap us up there if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
So as you guys know, we have new episodes every Monday, so you can subscribe on Spotify so you don't miss out on any of the action. Please make sure that you do also follow us on Instagram at Hello Starhose. And if you enjoy this podcast, also we would love it if you left us a review as well. Also, if you would like to know more about your personal stars and astrology in general and what it means for you, please make sure that you reach out to our very own real life wizard and book a reading with Matt at dragonstoneinsights.com. As usual, obviously we'll put everything we've spoken about in the show notes as well, and we will share all the information around our cards and the transits that have come up too. So thank you again for listening. We've really enjoyed your company this week. Remember to wear a mask, wash your hands, and continue to be kind and look after each other.